Hey there, and welcome to Happy, Healthy, and Skeptical. We are your hosts, Jen Hobson and Christy Palermo, and today we are going to be talking about creative flow. So, what's interesting is when I think of the word creativity, typically automatically, my brain goes to creation and artistic creation. But when we're actually talking about creative flow, and sometimes people refer to it as a flow state, what it actually means is the mental state of being completely present and fully immersed in a task. It can go as far as being so immersive that some people even say it's kind of a psychosomatic experience. I haven't personally experienced that, but I love the idea of being present and fully immersed in something that I'm doing. So, as we start this, Christy, what I want to ask you is, when do you typically feel the most creative or creative flow? And then when are you most challenged by the need to be creative and that want to be in a state of creation?
That's a really great question. And as you ask that, I think of like my life before as a performer and dancer, growing up my whole life, and what that looked like was as a creative flow was more about the artistic state of it. So it looks much different now that I'm not performing and dancing all the time and have my family and my business. And it's a different state, but I love the that you mention the actual definition of it, because that's exactly it. Is when I'm most present is when I'm feeling creative. And creative meaning with ideas for things I want to do with my business, ideas for things to do with our family, like just things that I'm kind of waiting on for answers type of thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I find that in the morning, before I have, I guess, influence from outside influence from other people, is when I'm most creative, because I'm not taking in other people's opinions or ideas. Or even if I want to go do a post on Instagram, like if I'm not absorbing what other people are doing first, and I just come up with my own idea of what I want to put out or write about, or anything like that, before I take in anybody else's opinions or other ideas, I find I'm more creative. So back to what we've talked about many times, is my morning routine. And I love to free flow journal for a page, and I find that gets all the extra white noise out of my brain. But it's also when I write out ideas and work through things, questions in my own mind, or things that I want to work towards in my life. And that's where I find that I can get really creative. But it is funny to think about in my life as a performer. It feels like a whole different life now. But I feel like I had definitely been in that state where you mentioned, of just being like totally in a flow of, it's like you lose track of time. I really can't explain it when you're in, because I like to choreograph as well as actually dancing and performing and taking class. I like to create pieces for dance and circus stuff. And so when I'm in that state of creating, it really is like time does not even exist. Like all of a sudden you look at a clock and it's like 2 hours have gone by and you're like, what just happened? I was just in this like
The
totally
zone.
different zone. Yeah. And it's a beautiful thing, because that's that super, super present state of just being absorbed in what you're doing, that you don't even notice anything else happening. And it doesn't affect you either. Like when you're actually in it too, like other people's opinions or thoughts, it like doesn't even matter. You're just doing your thing. But I think it can totally translate now, seeing the two different lives I've had, but seeing how it can translate into business and family and other goals in your life, and really just working towards and letting yourself have the ideas to build on.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where, for the average person listening to us, we're no longer in the performance season, right, of our lives. That has been a much bigger part for you, and it was a big part for me. I get to do it as a fun outlet now, but it's not my main focus. And it's funny, if you've ever seen the movie Soul, the Disney movie Soul, they talk about being so entrenched in the zone, but it's not always in an entertainment or actual creative person's identity, right? If you're in business or you're trying to reach a goal or you're in fitness or you're writing a book, any of these things can allow for a creative flow. And if you haven't listened to our last podcast, I definitely want to encourage you, go back, listen to distractions,
Good point.
because yes, distractions are the things that I think interrupt our ability to have creative flow. And it's interesting that you said the morning, because I always think of mornings, right? If you're able to get that good sleep, your brain was kind of cleaning itself, scrubbing away the plaque. You were actually able to wake up with a clean slate, which is probably why for you feel this opportunity without outside influence, no matter what it is, whether you're a person that normally turns the news on or even reads a book. The thought process is my mind is blank. So what I'm sharing is truly, truly what I want to share and who I am. Where a lot of times who we become, even just in a day, one day, not throughout our lives, is so influenced by everything we see, we hear, we read, we touch, even that we're a part of. So it's interesting that you're saying in the morning, that's when I'm feeling the most creative. And I really feel like I create that creative flow. So on the flip side, when do you feel that you're most challenged?
Yeah, I have to like actually think about that.
Well, so think about that for a second. And where I can say I feel the most challenged is when I'm living kind of in a state of chaos, right? I'm not really sure how things kind of transcribe throughout the day, or I didn't have a plan. Not that the plan always has to go perfectly, but I didn't go in with a plan. And I definitely believe in especially in business, if you fail to plan to fail. And I think that happens with a lot of things. And it's hard because you're going, wait, we're talking about creative flow. Why do I need to create a plan? Right? It seems like the two are oxymorons. Why would they go hand in hand? Again, the plan doesn't have to be executed perfectly, but you have to go in and go, what am I actually trying to achieve? And am I enjoying the process enough to get into the zone and hit the next, fitness goal, nutrition goal, my next business goal, or helping the next person, whatever it is that you're getting to, going, where's the start? How do I start? And then how am I planning on getting there? Because if there's just no, maybe a to-do list or focus on your goal, inevitably you're just in the creative flow trying to figure out where the hell you're going to land. So
Yes. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to finish it. So for me, where I feel are most challenged with is if I have this big vision goal and the vision is a little fuzzy, which is fine because your vision's going to change. I feel most challenged when I don't go, okay, what are the steps that I believe at this point in time I need to take to get there?
I think that makes sense. And so you're saying you use the word chaos, which I
Mhm.
think a lot of people can relate to. And it's funny because I feel the total opposite when it comes, now that I think about it, when it comes to distraction. Like I like to have more openness and things not being so predictable, where I have like a general say plan for my day.
Mhm.
But if things get too rigid and too, I don't want to say chaos in the way that you're mentioning it, but I think more just like too busy. Like I'm too busy to have my own thoughts, like because I'm just constantly thinking of the next task. Like this past week, we had family in town. We were visiting. We were traveling, road trips. Like it was just like I did not have the moments to like have my own clear, really creative thoughts. I guess so.
Mhm.
More being able to be in the flow of a day, but having space,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. So I think having the space to be able to let yourself have that freedom. So if I don't have that space is where I feel really rigid and really stuck. And I can't, it's like I cannot be creative or I cannot get into that flow.
Well, and I think again, I'm encouraging you to go back and read to distract, listen to distractions. But I think that's where, we're constantly, and just to reverse, balance is really a figment of your imagination. It just is. We always kind of think of the pendulum swing, and perfect balance is when they're totally even. But unfortunately, if you have things you want to achieve in life, there's just no way to have perfect balance. And the balance is going to swing depending on your season. If you are in a growth mode and you're focused as an entrepreneur on growing your business, then guess what? Things are going to hang down because they just can't get a priority right now. Or if you are in a quality time season and you are focused on all family, guess what? Then the business isn't growing as fast as it would be if that would be the priority. So balance, for my whole conversation of this, balance just doesn't actually exist in the completely balanced, even weighted option, right? So when we're trying to
I think
go
that's a
along,
great point to make, and just for all of us, anybody listening, just to remind ourselves of that, like, oh, right, it's okay to be not balanced
yes.
in different and that as you mentioned, it's different seasons, it keeps changing,
Yeah, I
whatever is
think a lot of
priority.
times we beat ourselves up because we're not completely balanced in every single area of our life, but it also depends on what season you're in. So there should be no guilt or shame or shoulding on yourself because you're not completely balanced and giving the same energy to every single aspect of your life. And I had started there to kind of navigate to the point of, riding that fine line between, creativity and chaos. And when I use the word chaos, I actually am thinking of being too busy, saying yes to too many
Mhm.
things that aren't actually in alignment with what you're trying to achieve. So my chaos is actually saying, if you say yes to everything, and for me, people know me, I'm probably not going to say yes to every single birthday party and every single outing, but I'm going to say yes to the things that bring me joy and feed me energy. Because without them, I feel too drained to ever attempt to be in the creative flow process or to move things along towards my goals. So the idea of letting go of balance, letting go of, like you said, the word so rigid. I absolutely want a plan, but I also have the idea of the plan might not go the way I intended, right? I want to get to that next promotion in my business. Well, you know what? It's not necessarily on the timeline that I planned, but that doesn't mean I'm going to stop going for it, right? And it's the
Mhm.
idea of I have a plan, but it might not go perfectly. And that can even be in a single day, right? I have a plan of what I want this day to look like, and it doesn't go perfectly, but I appreciate the moments where it didn't go perfectly and something else good came because of it. So I think the chaos for me is saying yes to the things that don't bring me joy and drain my energy, right? And that can't always be every single day. There's unfortunately sometimes we have responsibilities that we have to say yes to some things that don't bring us joy. But for the majority of the time, I have created that boundary of saying, nope, that's just not something that brings me energy. And I want to have energy and the ability to have that creative flow for the things that I really want. So I have to create that boundary and say, no, I need to protect this part and this time for me. And I think if you're trying to figure out, well, how do I even start to attempt to get into that process? And maybe you have additional ones, Christy, but my thought process goes to, start with a to-do list and then cross some things off of it. What are the top 2 things on there? Don't feel like you have to do the whole list and create some goals. I actually like to call them commitments. And I've mentioned that in the podcast before. I really like the word commitment. And especially Christy always inspires me with this is just write. Free flow, right? You have no idea what will come out. I can guarantee you that. I have not done it as consistently as you, but sometimes when I take the time to do it, I'm like, where did that thought come from? I wasn't expecting to write that. And then if you're still feeling like you're in a funk, like music can be so inspiring and listen to something you don't normally listen to, right? Go a little bit outside of your comfort zone. And visuals, I think vision boards, I love vision boards because they're going to constantly inspire you. Because if you put it on your vision board at some point, it meant it sparked something inside of you. So just looking at it. And for me, I know a lot of us with our phones, we all put pictures of our family, right? Well, I actually changed that a couple years ago. I luckily get to see my family every day. So I changed it to the things that I want and the things that push me to do more, right? Rather than just a picture of my kids smiling. I love them and I want to look at them all the time. But what are the things that are actually going to push me to do new things and kind of go outside my comfort zone? And, readers are leaders. Read something. Get out of your comfort zone, get out of your own head, get into somebody else's story for a hot second and see where it leads you. So I don't know which ones it brings to mind for you, but those are my top ones of being like, give your brain a break and switch gears.
those are some really great ideas to help because, right, for a lot of people, it's like, where do I start? And so I want to go back to, you said the word a couple of times, you mentioned energy. And I think that's such a huge part of finding this flow state, creative state, whatever you want to call it, is that you have to find energy. If you're in a part of your day that is just like you are crashing, like for me, 4 p.m. is like my biggest crash time. Like I need energy fizz, like that is when I need help, to feel good. So I would never schedule because, again, and I know you are the same way with scheduling things. I would never schedule my free time to be, or flow time or creative time. I would never schedule it around that time of day because that's when I have the least amount of energy. So it takes way more energy to be energetic. So I think coming to find the things, as you said, that are gonna spark something. So first of all, knowing what part of your day, or figuring out what part of your day you find the most energy. Maybe it's at night, maybe it's in the morning like me. But you mentioned music. That's what I would have said too. I find that music always, just finding my favorite song that I haven't, sometimes I forgot about a song. I'll go back through a playlist, an old playlist, and be like, oh, I forgot I love this song. And I'll literally just start dancing to it with the kids. And they get so excited that it gets me more excited. And the other thing outside of music, because music can really transport you, and it really does for me being an artist, but I know it does for so many people, that it can be a certain moving point. But maybe music's not it for you. But really, what I like to say is just play. Like, just if you have kids, just let yourself put your phone totally away, like that you can't even hear the notifications, and just letting yourself play with the kids and let them lead the whole play, and not trying to redirect them, but seeing what comes out of it. And you find a lot of creative time in that, and you find your brain like opening up in a new way, which I find. And as adults, we just don't play enough. And so if you don't have kids, it doesn't have to be that type of play. It can be going for a walk in the park, or to the beach, or just being out in nature, I find is really helpful too.
I
But
think
maybe
of
it's
I always laugh and I think of when I think of adults playing, I go back to the Friends episode where Phoebe runs, like flailing her arms around her, and it's the most fun ever. And I feel like as adults, that's why we go back to the self-conscious and the stories we tell ourselves about what people are gonna think about us if we're having fun playing. And like you said, whether or not you have kids, there is an inner child in all of us, and we need to figure out how to have fun. And remember, we have that person, like you said, if it's hiking, I love the ocean, I will always go to the water. I unfortunately will never, it's not unfortunately for those people, I will never live in a landlocked state, so they will not meet me. That is not where I can live. I have to be
totally agree with that. That's why I'm in Florida.
right. So I think it's let go of the stories, let go of the judgment, and maybe your play looks different. Don't feel like you even have to define what that means, but if it brings you energy, and it, especially if you're feeling like you're in a funk, if you're feeling like you have been in your comfort zone for a while and there is complacency setting in with your current situation, and there's sometimes where you're going to be in a season of comfort, and that's okay. But if we stay there too long, comfort actually becomes deterioration. So just know when you have to flip the switch and go, all right, I got to change something. I have to create more energy for myself. I have to allow myself to be creative. Again, we're not all artists. That's not what we're talking about here. But we're coming up with new ideas. We're feeling different about things. We want to either move our body or move our mind. So how are you going to take the opportunity to go, oh, I even have new commitments. I have new goals, or I'm about to enter a new season, or you know what? I just had a really hard season, and it's time for me to give myself a little bit of grace and do something new.
Yes. And this, as you just said, all that reminded me of another book that I absolutely love and have done this. It's more of a workbook kind of thing. And it's called The Artist's Way, but it can be for anybody. It doesn't have to be a specific artist. Anybody can go through it. And it's by Julia Cameron. And I've done it multiple times in my life, just especially when I wanted to get to do a certain specific thing. But one of the things she encourages that I absolutely love is to take yourself on a date once a week, and she calls it like your artist date. But really the point is to once a week, and it doesn't have to be something you spend money on, but maybe it is. Maybe because this also sparked when you were talking to remind me to say, sometimes it's just going to a new type of class or learning a new hobby without feeling like I'm have to like be good at it or learn it, because we tend to want to be like, oh well, I'm not any good at that, so I'm not going to try it. But really just letting ourselves be in that play mode of learning something new, maybe taking a class, or maybe just taking ourselves again to the park to for a walk, for whatever it is, but taking yourself on these quote unquote dates each week, and how that can open up so much freedom in your day. And I remember I used to do it at the time, and it really helps. It really gets you into that state of energy, but also out of your head of all the to-do list stuff.
It
And
releases some of the noise,
yeah,
right? That's what we're all
yes.
hanging on to, whether it's
Mhm.
our own self-talk or it's stuff we've heard through the day. You got to kind of release some of the noise. Let it go outside if you're outside,
Bye. Fly away.
right? I
So
enjoyed that you
Jen,
said take yourself for a
yeah,
walk at the park.
yeah,
You just tell you take your dog for a walk, right? Take yourself for a walk.
and maybe skip. Hmm. Like let
And
yourself skip like a kid. Literally, you'd be surprised how much like joy that can bring, and you start laughing, and you'll probably laugh at yourself, and maybe other people will see you, but then you start laughing and you're like, oh my gosh, this is fun. I forgot what it's like to skip.
well, and I have to let everyone know that's listening is I have seen Christy skip as an adult, and I may have reluctantly joined in. It's fine and it's okay. And guess what? We didn't die.
You didn't die, nothing happened, and you end up laughing, and it's fun and it's funny.
Yeah.
So I actually want to come back around, because we never went for you and didn't get to ask you what would you say is the point where you feel most creative or feel most in the flow?
So I feel like there's no one specific time for me. Again, I go in with a loose plan, but I'm really open to more fluidity. And what I will know, similar to what you said, and I think it's great, is I can more identify when I know I won't be creative. So avoiding those times. I think for me, sometimes it can be early in the morning. As I get older, it tends to be not as late in the afternoon or at night. So I really do think probably in the morning, similar to you, if I had to identify a time, it doesn't happen often, but I do want to be one of those people that gets up before anybody else, because that has been the time where I feel the noise is very, very quiet. I can think about a lot of things, or pages in my book, they jump out at me more. So I insist on taking a picture of them, or I might even pick up a journal at that point when the noise, literally and figuratively, is quiet. But I'm open to other things. Sometimes I think it depends on my environment, right? Not just sitting in my house for the 8th day during the winter, but maybe I went to the zoo. It's funny, I was thinking about it yesterday. I had a trip with my kids to the zoo, and I was like, what people don't do anymore? You don't go to the zoo and like draw the animals. Like that would be really fun to just sit there. And so sometimes it's just moving my environment to make me think of new things. Not that I'm necessarily running back to the zoo to draw the elephants, but it makes you think of things you wouldn't normally do. So I think it's definitely in the morning, but it's also if I'm feeling in a funk, I'm going to either change my environment or, like you said, turn on some music and move my body to change my mind.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think us giving our ideas of when we feel it helps other people think like, oh, okay, yeah, I can relate to that. Or no, that's definitely not me. I need to find another time and space.
Well,
Um, yeah.
the last one, if I'm talking about in business, where I do feel my most creative flow for me is scheduling the time. Saying, as soon as, maybe when the baby goes down for a nap. And the other thing, it's interesting, if I'm talking specifically business, I am most in the flow sitting at a desk. I don't know why, and that's not the same for everybody, but when I am getting into the nitty gritty of business and, an hour and a half has passed, it's because I set the start time. I didn't necessarily, set an end time. And I sat here in a specific way and everything was all set up, right? I didn't have to get to my desk and clean the desk and organize the desk and move everything. And if it was a mess, I just pushed it out of the way. So the outside noise was quiet, my distractions were limited, and I made the time for it. So if you're talking about business, I think you have to kind of think, Is there a specific time, like you said, where I have the most energy? It's not an energy sucking time. And have I set myself up where I'm not distracted to do other things instead of starting my creative flow? Is there an opportunity? And if it's a different goal for you, maybe it's not business related, maybe it's not even just, life related, maybe it's health or fitness. Have you picked a time where you're not already going to be decreased energy? And have you eliminated the distractions so you don't start something else when that's your time? It's your time.
Yes, and I will say that I 100% agree with you when it comes to my work time. Again, being scheduled, as we said multiple times today already, being scheduled and sitting at my desk. I will absolutely agree with you on that. And knowing like my stuff is just right where it is and exactly how I like it and free of distractions. And and then once I start the process, sometimes there's still moments where you don't want to do what you need to do. So starting with an easy task that will, one, build energy and two, create confidence. And then you can, and so I know there's books that say start with the hard stuff, like they say eat the frog first. I don't know if you've ever heard that phrase. Do the hard thing first, but sometimes you need to give yourself a little confidence, a little energy to start and do the thing that you like doing most with it. Like for right now, I'm talking about work. Do the thing I like doing most, which is connecting with people. So that I'll start doing that, and that gets me into that state of energy and building confidence to then do the things maybe that seem harder or that I'm procrastinating on.
No, I think
But
that makes a lot of sense because you know what? We all need a win in our day. So
Mhm.
find ways that you can win and celebrate them too. When you do the first thing because you did the thing and you enjoyed it, celebrate yourself. Guess what? Celebrating is also going to encourage the behavior. So don't forget to celebrate you when you get the shit done. Well, I think this was a different road than what we normally go down. And I want to encourage everyone to listen to, you know, get out there, do something different, be creative. Don't let your own limiting stories, you know, actually limit you from trying new things or getting into what you love to do, and don't let it stop you from going after your big goals, your big commitments, and make the vision really really clear, and know that you don't have to be an artist to be in a creative flow, right?
100%. And I will say, to go back to our episode on self-sabotage with what you just said, because
Okay.
that's going to help too on
Yes.
the ways that we hold ourselves back.
Yes, go back to self-sabotage and distraction, and we will make sure to bring you another episode. But until next time, we hope you join the conversation, and you can follow us on Instagram at Happy Healthy Skeptical.